Now, once again, I found something very interesting from X/Twitter, specifically from the Twitter called GrubHub app. If you remember, 5 years ago, and yes, have been almost 5 years, this sort of commercial popped in using sort of very cheap design characters to sell GrubHub for a app, and people really hated it because how cheap it really was, but at the same time affect the cartoon community in a very weird way because every time people sort of compare of everything looks the same, they always throw the word Grubhub because it looks the same to them at least. But a lot of cartoon community or animators point out no, Grubhub is sort of cheap because they use sort of the basically free sort of stock they have in the program and reanimate it. But it's sort of interesting how now Grubhub app kind of looks a little different nowadays. One of the commentators down below don't point out this looks more polished than the AI Coca-Cola. In a way, it's kind of true. Nowadays, people just hate AI and they completely forgot Grubhub. Of course, Grubhub only was successful is for one specific reason, the memes. If you don't know how they use business tactics, it's that they use probably whatever they can to push their narrative, push their own merch on your face, but doing the best, cheapest way in the most clever way to do it. In other words, making sort of cringe enough to stick to your head, but enough to force people to use you to make memes so get free promotion. And this is what the reason why a lot of people kind of still or kind of forgot the reason why they hated Grubhub, the commercials. To be fair, when they doing this commercial, it was between the pandemic and they're really nothing else to do, just watch television or watch streaming service on YouTube all day, and this pop up every single time that you piss you off. Now if you've seen this anywhere, you just have this sort of disdain. You want to complain and rant online about this awful commercial. But yet, people use this sort of example why how everything in the West looks the same. Even that is sort of a lie. And this is sort of true what it happens, but nowadays it's sort of slowed down. But the cartoon community still sort of have conversation of this sort of event. Now, before I continue on, my name is Rachel. I like to talk about animation, not just animation, the reviews, first impressions, cartoon theories, or sometimes, if I have some spare time, cartoon breaking news. Of course, you like how it's going, like to help my channel, put a like, comment, and subscribe, and that's the only thing to do. If, of course, if you're not, that's fine. You do. Thank you, because of you, I'm getting close to my main goal of 2,000 subscribers. And yes, I'm getting close every single day because of people like you, people who put like, comment, and subscribe. Thank you. Now let's get started of this sort of interesting conversation about HubGrub 5 years later. Now let's get started. Now, every time someone uses GrubHub to make a point, and the same people who don't watch anything different or anything new because they just watch the same thing and complain why it looks the same, even that there are completely different options, even there are also different sort of art styles. Because if you want to compare basically The Simpsons or Family Guy or South Park or basically the Proud Family, go side to side all of them and they don't look the same. Even you want to compare to even movies, you can tell which company which like Disney, Pixar, Illumination, they have this own proper style, but they look differently. The reason why they look kind of similarly is sort of the smooth factor, the sort of circle kind of angle, because that's the whole point. The feel sort of friendly, trying to grab your attention. If you have sharp angles like a square or a triangle, that usually is sort of something dangerous to push you away. That's why they have to make it sort of circles to make it sort of soft, smooth, to make it friendly. And that's what they did on GrubHub. But the only difference is GrubHub is not really a cartoon company, it's an app. They're there to sell you a product and make sure the product works. But you can't really compare GrubHub with professional animated projects for one specific thing. GrubHub was cheaply made. There are some occasions, some companies reprint this again and again, the same art style, because it's the same company and the same sort of format recognizing that automatically. Even people who are not cartoon fanatics can tell, well, it looks like the same art style, so that could be like a friendly cartoon. Or depends of the different show, more edgy and more dark, you realize, oh, this could be more mature, or more cheaply it means something like Adult Swim or Family Guy or something like adult. Like you could tell how this mental sort of psychological way to grab your attention. But they all look the same. No, that's sort of a very weird, cheap, odd way to explain things, because not really. You could tell there's sort of changes in some characters is that you choose to make your point and pretend the rest of the stuff does not exist. But you want to say something, a company who quite literally looks the same everything, only one company does this perfectly and the same time for a reason. That would be Hanna-Barbera. Just post Google and put Hanna-Barbera cartoons. Every single character looks the same. They do have the sort of model they have of the Scooby Gang, but even that is a lie, because they do explore different designs, but yet their main goal is sort of teenage, sort of high schools with strange adventure. But once again, they do use the same design for one specific reason. It's because they use the same character design creator to make almost every single cartoon. So it's obvious it's going to look the same, but at the same time you have to recognize they have to be smooth, recognizable in understanding which brand are you watching. Because the more kind of similar it really is, the more you understand which company is doing that. At least that's sort of my sort of explanation, because once again, if you want to throw GrubHub in the whole conversation, you watch the trailer. The trailer is sort of cheap, piece it together, and just to make you piss you off. Because at the very end, that's the whole point. So they can use you and hopefully make this sort of memeable. Because the only reason this commercial was successful is because of the memes, and also on top of this, the frustration seeing this again and again. The point is just sort of frustrating. Of course, let's see what the cartoon community says down below in the comments. Now let me remove my glasses because I can't really read sort of the comments, but just to let you warn, because some people kind of reading out how I look without my sunglasses. Let's go to the first sort of comment. We started this sort of conversation. This is basically saying, I effing hate this sort of commercial because of sort of the mental damage they did in the animation fandom, and because of this they made a lot of jokes about this look like modern Pixar. Even that is sort of a lie, because if you compare side to side, Pixar new animation projects don't really look much about it. And it's kind of true, because look at it, like everybody keeps saying sort of bean mouth, and none of them really fits this. The only closest one is basically Lucas, and also this, I can't remember the cartoon or the animated movie, Helio, I think. Yes, I am correct, it's Helio. But other than that, they do make a good, interesting sort of conversation or a good point, because none of them really looks like GrubHub. Even that you want to sort of point them out, they have beam mouse, but not really. Like GrubHub doesn't have anything, none of the characters. The only IP or company is close to this is Illumination. Even that, how much I don't like Illumination sort of projects, even they have sort of a art perspective, a sort of elevation, and this one just sort of cheaply made because it's the commercials. Of course, let's continue on the other conversation of this. Now, there's another one, it kind of states the same. This is actually completely straight up false, because compared to like Hoppers, if you compare the app to this sort of Harper's animation, they look completely different, because Harper's art style looks more like kind of a little bit more realistic but yet cartoony. But also they added up something like Soul, because Soul is more kind of more cartoony but more shape like. Also you have another one they compare the IO2 Also, the same thing like the Fire and Ice sort of Pixar movie that everybody's sort of not sure was any good. I didn't have a chance to see it, but people do point out it's actually pretty good. Not the best, but it's still good. Even that sort of movie, the art style is just so uniquely different. Even that you can say the only similarity is the eye or mouth, but even that is just sort of stretching the idea. But once more, it's sort of just to show you the sort of meta hoops of people trying to compare of the app of Pixar that is not really the same. Even the high quality standards is still so different and unique to compare of the app in other words. Now the other commentary do say the same thing, like white people's trying to unironically compare hoppers to GrubHub, they doesn't look nothing the same. Even that I sort of repeat this in other comments, even in my own opinion, is this doesn't look the same. It looks super different. Even Elio, once again, I made the same point, doesn't look exactly as the same as GrubHub. It's just sort of a very weird, messed up sort of thought because people wanted to complain, but at the same time, you don't need to actually watch it. There are other options, other movies from foreign countries, and I'm not talking about Asia, Japan, or China. There are other countries who make animation for families and adults do completely different art style. It can really look like something like a Western sort of style, but yet do something different. Just to make you clear, there is options, but people always want to complain of Disney, Pixar, and DreamWorks. Even that they're not the only company, they're still making cartoons. There are other different companies. It's something that people are just sort of want to complain because they can't complain, but the only problem is they choose to not look up other things. They prefer just to be whining and be applauded by a bunch of people who kind of think the same, even that there are other options besides Pixar, Disney, Illumination, and etc. Like you could find more weirder, more adult things like in Europe, in other words, if you choose to look it up, in other words. But let's continue on here. Now, this commentary made a very strong point that there is no reason to sort of compare the aliens from Elio looking like Turning Red, Luca, or even the GrubHub because an Elliot that is all the aliens do not look the same. Only Luca, not Luca, Elio, I mean, because Elio is a human, a child, someone still trying to develop. Because it is kind of true. Because whatever you want to say about that specific movie, the art style is unique. None of the aliens look alike. Even that people complain they feel the need to work some of the character designs a little bit more to make it more interesting. But all of that, the conversation or the point still stands because it is different. You cannot compare this to GrubHub because at the very end they do not look nothing the same. This is sort of the weird thing where people keep pointing out it looked like GrubHub. Like what point? Because GrubHub is cheap. Yeah, I tried to make that point over and over again to sort of make sense. Keep thinking about what people are saying, why it looks like GrubHub, because at the very end nothing looks like GrubHub. GrubHub is cheap produced for commercials and basically not really original characters, but all of that, that's all this person trying to say in other words. I don't know you, what do you think about this? Now this is my last sort of kind of breaking down comments right here. It's pretty basic, saying exactly they agree the same point, and even that accepting Luca, Elio, and other Pixar movies being good. But you have to realize this sort of new era, even that people want to kind of represent it as GrubHub, is completely different because this is the era of Pixar or Disney is basically sort of slice of life, knowing yourself, how develop becoming sort of better or having a great life in the moment, in other words. And that's the whole point of this sort of era. Even that is sort of not perfect, but you get the idea. If they give it more time, more polish, and more actually to breathe and be more creative, this sort of formula could be actually even better. But once more, it's all depends on you if you like slice of life. Because let's face it, all the new Pixar films are slice of life. Usually, slice of life have sort of a negative sort of stance of people saying it's too boring. I don't get it. But once more, it's a different style of storytelling. But once more, you don't need to like it, but you don't be a sort of a kind of animator sort of stuck up critic saying, "Oh, animators look this, all the art style look the same," but not really. Like your sort of point of view doesn't really make sense if you look up face to face of GrubHub that doesn't look anything like it. If it does, only for maybe a shape of the smile, but even that, not even really. Not all the characters smile at all. But once more, just to give you a sort of idea, the sort of mentality of Hoops, they try to make this sort of narrative to make it, oh yeah, you're alright, but no, not really. That's not the whole point. Like, your point doesn't really have any weight into it, because if you notice something similar, that's it. That's the only thing it has. Just one thing is similar, but it never asks the other question. If it looks similar, why they elect that? Like, what genre, what the reason of purpose of that design to help the story develop outwards. And the little things that people don't really want to ask, they just want to complain. Of course, I have to apologize. I feel I was sort of like a broken record of this video. I do feel like I'm repeating myself too many times, stuttering. It just sort of gets frustrating and very hard to really think of something different to explain different ways to make this sort of sense. But I don't know how you felt about this. You feel GrubHub screw over the cartoon community or not really? Or you think people just over exaggerating? Tell me down below, let me know. I got nothing else to say, just thank you for watching. Don't forget to subscribe and have a wonderful day. Bye.